My hello. Okay, so it is working. I changed to scene just to, but we're good now. So we're all good. Okay, I'm gonna call people in.
No?
No.
We need to make sure Carol's good.
Okay.
I'm trying to call her.
Carol, if you could hear me, could you please unmute so we can test your audio?
She's not responding. I'm texting.
Hello, hello. Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. If we could start to make our way into the sanctuary, please grab what food and coffee you have and make your way to your seats in the sanctuary so we can get the annual meeting started. Please and thank you. Once again, everyone, if you could please grab all of your food and drinks, everything that you need, and we can make our way into the sanctuary to our seats so we can get our annual meeting started. Good morning once again, church. Again, if we could please find our seats and make our way into the sanctuary so we can get our annual meeting up and running, we would very much appreciate it.
Who's calling the meeting, Rebecca? We're ready.
I think we have enough for a quorum, so.
Okay, if we can find our way to some seats and settle in here, our counters are counting to make sure we have a quorum. Just another minute here. Well, thank you everybody for being here at our annual meeting. We have quite a full agenda today, so we'll try to get underway here in just a second as soon as I get a confirmation of the quorum. All right, we're good. We're good to go. Calling the meeting to order at 11:24 a.m. this Sunday morning. We're going to start with a prayer from Reverend Dr. Eric Smith.
Let's pray. God, meet us in community. God, find us in deliberation and discussion. God, come join us as we dream. God, be known in our budgets and our spreadsheets, in our reports and our agendas. God, be known in the ways we speak to each other in love. God, be present here in all our business as you are always present in our songs and in our words and in the spaces in between us. God, look for us as we make our way into the future. God, guide us as we look beyond this moment and into all the moments that we trust are still to come. Be in our visions and inhabit our aspirations and urge us always into fidelity and trust. Amen.
The next item on our agenda is the approval of the meeting minutes from June 8th. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes of the meeting from June 8th? Seeing none, the minutes are approved. The next item of business is going to be the election of a council member at large, Aaron Moko, and our clerk, Tammy Weatherly. Do you approve Aaron Moko as member at large and Tammy Weatherly as clerk? And I think you have to vote. Just by hand, right? Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you. Absolutely. Aaron and Tammy, can you stand? Aaron was our clerk prior, but moved into a voting position in council. And Tammy has been so gracious to help pick up the slack and take our notes for us. Thank you. And thank you, Aaron and Tammy. The next item is going to be a safety team update, and Annie will be coming up for that.
Thanks, Rebecca. I know that probably I am not the reason that most of you are here today, but thank you for letting me speak just briefly. I'll be quick to talk just a little bit about safety team. Safety teams is a part of the facilities and management and was started about 7 or 8 years ago because of break-ins in the parking lot, different things happening around the church while we're all in here that we didn't have any idea about. So every Sunday, as you know, there's 2 of us out there. We wear a yellow vest, and we really provide safety for what's going on while all of our attention's in here. We're not a security team. We're not obviously, anything beyond a safety team. And I just kind of need to emphasize that somehow. I certainly have said to my own children, you know, I'm head of the security team, and they look at me like I'm absolutely crazy. And so I show them my yellow vest, and it's not been impressive. But, but we have lowered, ever since we've started, we've had no break-ins during church services in the parking lot. We've lowered the speed of the people that cut through. So we have people coming from that direction to get to Brave Church because they're running late. And we have people coming from Hampton that take this as a shortcut. And we've slowed that down. People now stop without us reminding. We wave, we're friendly, and a lot of them park. It used to be maybe 30 or 40 cars from Brave Church would park. They expanded, changed their parking lot, and now we maybe get 10. But they're friendly, they wave, and I am pleased to say that now they have a safety team and they wear yellow vests too. They have golf carts, so that's, you know, maybe that's what I should be here for, is golf carts. We got walkie-talkies, which is how I got Craig Ely to be on the team. But anyway, we also always check doors. There's a lot of doors in this church that remain open by accident, and we do a walk-around check, and we check for any visitors that are overnight visitors that like to stay here in certain parts of the church and do a general cleanup. Otherwise, we're out there just to see what's going on. And it is very interesting. I mean, we've had some interesting stories. But the thing I'm here most for is my 4 clipboards. There are 17 of us, and that means every quarter all of us each miss 2 to 3 Sundays to do and protect all of you. And if we had double that number, we would only have to miss 2 Sundays out of the semester, or half the year. And in the winter, it gets pretty cold, and it would be nice not to have to do it quite so often. So I'm passing around sign-ups. I put 8 lines on each one, and hopefully they'll be filled with a name and email, and I can call and talk to you about it. But it would really be good if we could spread the fun that we have during Sunday morning while you're in here. Yeah, that's a good idea, Elaine. The time you start and the time you're done. So we're out there by 9:35, and we're done when church is done. So that can vary a little bit, but that's when we're finished. Quite a few of us bring headphones or stream, and it works pretty well. So often, I at least always hear the sermon. And as you saw this morning, you can be in choir and you can be on safety team because Deb went up and sang. So, any other questions? So just pass this around back. I'm doing it by sections. We'll start this way.
Times really important things that happen around here go unnoticed because they're not here in the sanctuary with us. So thank you to safety team. I'd like to invite Genevieve Sains up for a stewardship update.
Good morning, everyone. I think everybody probably already knows me, but I always introduce myself. I'm Genevieve Sains, and I had the distinct pleasure of serving as the stewardship chair for this giving season. I want to begin this out by expressing my extreme heartfelt gratitude. I'm the person that was kind of in front of you for a lot of this campaign. But this campaign would not have been possible without all of the wonderful, wonderful people who helped me out. With my co-chairs, I don't know where they're at, but Denise and Tammy and Doug, you guys are amazing, and I'm so grateful. And we also had a whole slew of people. I think we ended up deciding it was somewhere around 25-ish members of the congregation that helped with thank you notes or visits or calls or all sorts of different things. Also the staff at the church that has been just wonderful in helping us gather data and keeping us on top of everything. So, thank you so much to all of you. We all worked tirelessly. So, our campaign this year was titled It Takes Everyone, and it was multifaceted. For 2 months, we shared stewardship messages from the pulpit. We also reached out through targeted communications that included emails, letters, phone calls, and in-person visits. Every single household received an invitation to pledge. Most households were touched a minimum of 3 times with a direct communication, some even more than that. In addition, we specifically reached out to households who had not pledged in several years. So our data showed for the last 5-year pledge history. So we did reach out directly to those who had not pledged, households who had not increased their pledges over the last several years, and some households were asked to intentionally consider an additional pledge of $1,000 for the year. And all of the households were encouraged to return to pre-pandemic levels. In your booklet, you should have a full report with all of the data that we gathered. The biggest thing that I wanted to say today was that while we did not reach our dollar goal, we still really consider this drive as having been successful. We had a lot of wonderful things that we were able to discover. We gathered a lot of data about our pledges and how they are given, et cetera, et cetera. We also were able to narrow it down and get a little bit more accurate idea of how many actual households we do have in our community that are active members of our community. Here are a few of the statistics that we were able to gather through the data. A small number of households appear to be voting with their dollars in response to staffing, planning, or leadership concerns rather than pledging as a commitment to the community. This year, those decreases significantly offset the many increases we received. However, on the positive side, 46% of all pledging households either made a new pledge or increased their pledge, which is really encouraging. Many households who maintained their pledge have kept the same level for several years. Some may not realize that keeping a pledge flat for many years actually reduces support for the church operating budget due to inflation and rising costs, but it is something that we are mindful of. And along with that, we're also mindful that some households simply maintaining their gift is an act of real sacrifice, and we are grateful for them continuing their support. If we consider the approximately 40 households who remain on the membership roster but have not pledged in many years, alongside the 163 households who have pledged within the past 2 years, we estimate about 200 active households. Of those, this year in this pledge drive, 138 pledged, roughly 70%, with an average pledge amount of $3,900, which is an increase in the average pledge amount over the prior year. Finally, I want to return to the heart of stewardship. Every drive is an invitation for each of us to give in proportion to the blessings we have received, and in reflection of what this church means to us. So, I leave you with these questions. Have we reached that goal as a congregation? Has your household reached that goal? And together, how can we build an even better future for First Plymouth? Thank you. Question, you bet. Oh, will you come up to the mic so that we can all hear? Sorry, I forgot. Thank you, thank you.
Elaine Borden. So looking at the operational budget expenses in the various departments that we have all of the budgets for that we're going to be going over, You know, personally, I would like to be able to dedicate I do my pledge quarterly, and I would like for it to go into Christian education. But when I go to the website platform and it asks for the sub-fund, I don't see an alignment with choosing Christian education. There's a lot of great things in here. Children's education, community camp scholarship, community life flowers, green energy, whatever. And I just wanted to perhaps propose that the online payment system might align with how the annual meeting budgetary issues are going. That's all.
I can answer that question.
Yep, I was going to say, just so that I can clarify, you are asking that, or proposing that maybe the options that are given on the Shelby Next Giving align with the budget line items.
Or even broader categories. So for instance, flowers is something that shows up here. Well, flowers, I have to go in here and be like, okay, which grouping does flowers belong to?
Got it.
Okay, is that worship and arts?
Got it.
So my brain doesn't work quite that way.
so that you can be more intentional about where your pledge goes
Right,
specifically.
so that if I could just hit the button that says Christian education, boom, I'm done, and I'm happy, and how.
Got it. So
Okay.
Carol, there you are.
Thank you.
Yes.
Carol will address.
Yeah, I can answer that since our wonderful treasurer isn't here today. If you put in a pledge, it is applied to the operating budget and it goes to all of the departments. If you would like to pledge or make a contribution to a certain fund, say the Flower Fund or the Christian Education Fund or Creation Justice, those are not funded by pledges. Those are separate contributions. You can't specify your pledge to go to a certain fund. It goes only to the operating budget. Does that make sense?
So helpful. So if I'm on here and I'm wanting to fulfill my pledge, what button do I push to get it where it needs to go?
Probably the best thing is if you can call our office, we'll walk you through it.
I'm all on and signed up, but when I look at the online, it would be great if there was a box that said, I'm paying a quarter, this donation is going to my pledge. Or is it, and maybe I'll call the church, I don't want to take up too much time, but I'm ready to give money and I just want to make sure it gets out of my bank account into yours.
Sure, I mean, you can make a pledge on the website or online and it goes only to your pledge. You don't specify that it goes to a certain.
So do I make a quarterly pledge, do I use Shelby to make a quarterly pledge payment?
You can.
No,
I think
okay.
in the best interest of this
Yes,
meeting, I think
yes.
we need to sit down with you and walk you through it.
Of
It
where
is
to begin.
complicated sometimes,
okay.
depending on
Well,
what you're
thank
doing.
you.
But
Thank
we're
you, thank
happy to
you.
help you. Just call the office
Yeah.
and we'll walk you through it.
Okay.
Yep, so there is, and Carol will get you through it, but there is a specific place for pledge. So just to clarify, stewardship deals directly with the pledge. The pledge is what we consider in our overall budget as a community, but is not directed to any one specific something, meaning like you mentioned, the flowers or the Christian education or things like that. Your pledge is directly applied to the operating budget, which allows us to then execute all of the ministries that we outline with the 5 pillars in our bylaws. Does that make sense? Any other questions for me? Yes, please.
Hello, my name is John Falconetti, first-time caller, long-time member. Okay. It's a kind of a two-part question. Looking at page 7 for the consolidated version of the budget, Genevieve, my question is, on the line item for the First Plymouth General Fund, we see that number keeps going down. And my question is, do we know or do we have an idea as to when that number actually goes away? When do we run out of money from the First Plymouth Fund?
Yeah, Rebecca can answer that.
There is a document called First Plymouth by the Numbers, and there is a spreadsheet in there that calculates basically if we did nothing different, here's kind of a drop dead date or a cliff. What's important to note is every year we do things differently. And this year we did things differently in the budget. We've gained access to the Turpin Fund in a way that we haven't ever had it before, so that affects the overall effect on the First Plymouth Fund. But I'll direct you to First Plymouth by the Numbers, and I believe it's on the council webpage. If it's not, email me, I'll get it to you. Okay? Any other specific stewardship questions? I know, you promised me.
I did call Rebecca this week because I was so excited that Eric was coming to be senior minister. And I promised I wasn't going to get up, but I'm going to tell a story that I've already told some friends. It's a hard story to tell for me. Chris and I reduced our pledge this year for a variety of reasons, but some of it was because we were disappointed in leadership. Not you, Rebecca. But what was important to us wasn't happening here. And we'd visited other churches. And so, you know, Chris and I will have a heartfelt conversation. We're retired predominantly. We're looking forward to how long we're going to live, probably longer than we'd like to, and maybe longer than we have money for. But I think that we'll seriously, our pledges continue to increase since COVID. We haven't reduced our pledge until this year. But I would imagine there are other members in our community that have done similar things. It's hard for me to stand up here and say this as active as a member I am, and how important this church is to me. But I think it's important for us to be truthful and for us to say the things that are on our hearts, so that leadership knows. And I'll try really hard not to say another thing. I just want to vote.
Can I just say, first of all, Beth, thank you so much for having the bravery to say that. That is something that takes a lot of courage to stand up in front of all of us and say, this is the choice I made and this is why I made it. So thank you for being open and honest and letting us embrace you in that. I appreciate it. And I think you're absolutely right. I think there are members of our congregation that did make that choice and who may now consider something different. So thank you. I think the most important thing by saying all of this was that I really wanted us as a congregation to be able to have a moment to reflect and to bring those things out into the open so that we can all be aware of where we're at. So thank you.
Thank you, Genevieve. Thanks so much for all of your hard work and everyone on stewardship. Well, now as we are fully engaged in our annual meeting, we must acknowledge significant and swift changes that we've experienced in recent weeks. Truthfully, these shifts are part of something that has gone on much longer than that. The last 5 or 6 years have marked a distinct and often painful chapter in the life of First Plymouth, a time marked by growing resentment, distrust, and disconnection within our community. The reasons and episodes are many, but none of them matter more than us, the people who make up this community. I grew up here. Many of you helped raise me. The voice I found in youth group, the leadership I was encouraged to pursue when Bubba invited me to be the youth rep on the Rocky Mountain Conference at 17, the confidence you gave me when I was elected council as a teenager and again at 44, all of that happened here. My first time preaching in this pulpit as a child, and again just a few months ago. The faith I found sitting in the La Forêt Chapel courtyard, writing my confession of faith during confirmation with Linda Glenn. The course of study and the path of spirituality I would take in my life. These are all parts of me that you nurtured. For me, First Plymouth worked. Since returning, it's been a joy watching Skylar grow in this community, from Sunday school to youth group at La Forêt retreats, youth group and La Forêt retreats, to now ushering every second Sunday. It's been deeply spiritual watching my husband, Doug, sit beside me in worship, reclaim communion, and ultimately ask to be baptized and join the church, despite the wounds of a difficult Catholic upbringing. First Plymouth still works. It worked then, and it works now. Somehow, in the noise and division, we've forgotten that. And maybe the ways in which First Plymouth works have found their way out of the shared narrative in favor of a narrative that centers what doesn't work. Now more than ever, we need a safe spiritual spaces, places where hard conversations can happen with compassion and care. We too often take for granted the goodness that exists right here in this sanctuary and in each other. The dominant narrative has become one of distrust and conflict, but that's not the whole story, and that can't be our future. What about the joy and connections of our small groups, the laughter and fellowship around shared meals, the sacred moments of children finding belonging, and adults discovering new depths of spiritual formation? What if we focused on the glimmers instead of the pitfalls? What if we truly saw one another, saw something worth fighting for? What if we learned how to trust, relearned how to trust? The world outside our doors is heavy and frightening. Let's agree to leave that at the door. When we enter this place, our spiritual home, let's commit to seeing the best in one another. Let's begin again from a place of love, inclusion, and courage. God is not finished with us yet. Even as we say goodbye to 2 ministerial leaders, we are presented with opportunities for healing, growth, and grace. We are saying farewell to Reverend Alex Wright, who has grown up here herself in many ways, serving for 12 years as she pursued divinity school, ordination, and her role as minister to families and children. She has walked alongside us through declining Sunday school numbers, particularly after COVID, but never wavered. Whether for 1 child or 30, she has always showed up, even as her hours were reduced, even when her position was questioned in budget meetings. She showed up, and she cared deeply. Alex has offered pastoral care that many of you may not even be aware of, visiting homes, comforting families, helping children navigate a complicated world. Her legacy is one of love, faith, kindness, and quiet strength. She is proof that First Plymouth works. As she begins a new chapter, we send her with our deepest gratitude and our best wishes. We also prepare to say goodbye to Pastor Jocelyn, our designated term senior pastor. She came to us with hope, called by a diligent search committee to lead us through transition. We shared a joyful Advent, but shortly into the new year, challenges began to surface. Miscommunications, relational struggles, and diverging expectations. Over time, her role became less about ministry or the work we need to fully engage, and more about navigating those difficulties. This mutual parting, I believe, is the right decision for both Jocelyn and our congregation. While our futures are not aligned, I hope we can take lessons from our time together. And more importantly, I hope we can come together now. As a congregation, rather than retreating into the corners as we've done when faced with difficult realities and transitions in the past, we cannot afford more division. We need to write a new story together, one that includes everyone who is truly here now and dreaming of a shared future. One that reflects on how First Plymouth has worked in the past, continues to work now, and how it will work in the rapidly changing landscape of our future. First Plymouth will never be what it was, and it cannot continue to be what it is. But there is something bigger and more meaningful and important ahead for us. A word about council. I know there are questions and anxieties. I hear whispers that council isn't active or representative. I hear people who do not trust council. But let me be clear. Council is not about factions or personal agendas. Our job is to hold the entire congregation, your hopes, worries, and wildly different priorities, and try to serve everyone, not just a few. This current council is engaged, functional, thoughtful, and committed. We've had several extra meetings and a day-long retreat, as well as regular meetings in the past few months. They show up, they get curious, they work hard. We have longtime members like Jasmine, Aaron, and Melissa, who have been members well over 10 years. Multiple decades-long members like Eileen, Carol, Bruce, and me, and newer voices like Gary and John. If you don't know anyone on council, I invite you to introduce yourself and make a friend. These are kind, intelligent people, responsible and doing their best in extraordinarily complex times. This council is an example of how FP works. If it seems that council has struggled to make decisions, I invite you to reflect on this as a congregation. This congregation represents hundreds of differing needs, values, and opinions. These opinions vary on every question and go to every end of every spectrum. Still, all of us love our community, and we wonder what the future holds. I ask you to walk alongside council and try to hold all of our people all at once. Council reflects the congregation, and if we want clear direction, we need to speak with a more unified voice, one that finds compassion, one that is guided by what works here at First Plymouth. Let's build a path wide enough for all of our differences that moves us together in the same direction. So where do we go from here? Truthfully, I don't have all the answers, but I've been searching, and so has council. We know the scope of work to be done, as discussed at our June meeting, and we have been listening to you. We are constantly adjusting and thoughtfully responding to what you need and what you want, and the pieces and parts we need to focus on to move forward towards consensus. But who will walk with council through these difficult and trying times? Considering the transitions with Alex and Jocelyn, I began to think and pray about what comes next. As these changes became imminent and at the appropriate time, I began to engage in thoughtful conversations with Reverend Eric Smith. I wasn't sure what his capacity would be given his bivocational role, but throughout our communication, it quickly became clear that his deep love for First Plymouth and his intimate knowledge of this community uniquely positioned him to guide us forward at this specific point in time. His current sabbatical from ILIF has also allowed for another interesting and timely variable. Throughout our conversations, Eric and I noticed that he might just be the person that First Plymouth needs right now. Council believes the best next step is to elevate Reverend Eric Dr. Smith to senior minister. Reverend Eric Smith to senior minister, a settled and hopefully long-term position. His presence, faith, and steady leadership offer a path toward healing and unity. Eric would be filling the role of senior pastor in a part-time capacity, with more hours this year and a few less in following years, which is new for First Plymouth. And we are living in times when we need to try new things. I'll let Eric speak for himself in a moment, but I want to affirm that this recommendation comes from a place of deep discernment, care, and hope. Council has visioned this together with Eric, checked to make sure his call would be in line with our bylaws, congruent with direction from the Rocky Mountain Conference, and the best path to First Plymouth working long into the future. I'll bet you up, Eric.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for that. I want to start by saying two things today, and some of these are echoes of what Rebecca said. First, I want to say thank you, and I want to encourage all of us to say thank you to the Reverend Jocelyn Emerson. Obviously, Reverend Emerson's time at First Plymouth has not unfolded the way we all hoped. Sometimes the things we begin in expectation and in excitement end with our highest hopes unrealized. But that does not mean that we have failed, and it does not mean that Reverend Emerson has failed, only that the time and the nature of our time together ended differently than what we had expected. Our paths crossed for a little while, and I think we all learned from each other. I'm grateful for all the things I learned from Reverend Emerson, and I trust that many of you are as well. The second thing I want to say is another thank you, this time to our moderator, Rebecca Brown, and to the church council. It is, I'm sure you all appreciate, an exceedingly challenging moment to be in leadership at this church and at any church. We live in a time of big questions that are difficult to address, let alone resolve. And the moderator and the church council have been empowered by you to lead this congregation. It can be thankless work, as many of you know from experience. And in this moment, none of the choices available to us are ever going to be perfect choices. We no longer have perfect choices to choose from. So I want to be sure to recognize the extremely hard work of the church council, and especially Rebecca Brown, who's been working for this congregation at a rate that surpasses that of a full-time job. I think it can only be the result of providence and the good judgment of our past moderator that Rebecca is the one in this position now. Her combination of deep business knowledge and theological sophistication, a long history here at First Plymouth, which we just heard about, and a fresh perspective, her tirelessness, her creativity, have put this congregation in as favorable a position as is possible at this moment. So thank you to Rebecca, and thank you to your church council. The first time I ever stepped foot in this sanctuary was in the spring of 2007. I had flown into town for a couple of days to interview for an open and newly revised role, the youth and young adults position. The committee consisted of Phil Thompson and his daughter Rebecca, who I think was a sophomore in high school and was the youth group representative. Also representing the youth was Casey Thomas, and her mom Heidi was, I recall, not on the committee, do I have that right? But sitting in anyway, distracting herself with knitting because Casey had to have a ride home. The search committee was led by the Reverend Jane Ann Ferguson, who was associate minister at the time, and the night I was supposed to interview, they were running a little bit behind schedule, so they left me out there in the narthex to wait while they did their work, and as time stretched on, I wandered into this sanctuary. It was dark. I didn't know how to turn the lights on, so I strolled down the outside aisles along the edges of the pews. This was before the sanctuary was renovated. I stopped at this column, the one back here, where the kids sit during worship. And I remember standing there contemplating the column because I'd never seen anything like it before. I'd never seen such a bright and shiny tiling in a sanctuary. Even in the darkness of the night, the mirrored tiles were catching the light from the hallway. I remember standing there waiting for my interview, staring at the tiled columns, wondering what kind of church this might be. 18 years later, I'm still wondering what kind of church this might be. But more than that, 18 years later, I'm still wondering what kind of church this might become. I must have done all right in that interview that night because they hired me, and I spent 6 years as the full-time youth and young adults minister. Then, when I finished my PhD and was hired full-time at the ILF School of Theology, I negotiated with ILFM with the church to stay on here in a half-time capacity, still working with the youth group and adding adult education and more preaching into my portfolio. I've done that job for 12 years now. Over the years, I have worked alongside 4 different senior ministers of this congregation, and I saw up close and firsthand the way every single one of them showed up every single day trying to do the right thing. I saw up close and firsthand how the right thing was often unclear, how all the options were unpopular, how ancient histories and current events popped up seemingly out of nowhere to make things even muddier. I saw up close and firsthand how exceedingly difficult a task it is to lead a congregation like this one. I am under no illusions that being the senior minister of this congregation will be simple or straightforward or comfortable or easy. But I'm here today asking for your vote to do it anyway, because all these years later, I'm still wondering what kind of church this might be. I'm still wondering what kind of congregation this might become. Perhaps you're wondering the same thing. Perhaps you too are wondering what kind of congregation this might become. We have spent a long season in disagreement about just that question. The question has become acute in the past half decade or so, but the question of what kind of congregation we might be and might become has been floating in the air since at least that spring of 2007, when I first set foot in this sanctuary, and probably for a good while before that. At times, it has felt exciting to ask the question, and at times it has felt scary. At times, our ideas have united us, and at times they have raised barriers between us. But I believe that we are here today at an inflection point. I believe that we are here today with an opportunity in at least a few ways. Let me tell you what I mean. First, while it has been sad to see our ministerial staff move from 4 people to, as of next month, 1 person, that also presents us with a great opportunity. A lot of our conversation in the past few years has focused on the building and our physical footprint. We've also been staffed, though, like a church that is bigger than we are. I could not do this job alone as the only minister, but I also do not anticipate that we will need to hire 3 new people to fill 3 empty positions. I anticipate that we would move forward with 2 ministerial positions instead of 4, and that probably both of those positions will be part-time, which will provide some relief to the budget and which will lessen the amount we will need to draw from the First Plymouth Fund, at least in the short to medium term. This is, I think, good news. The second opportunity is that I and this congregation already know each other. And I think, for the most part, we already trust each other. Probably someone is out there thinking, well, I don't trust you. Fair enough. If you don't trust me and you're willing, send me an email and we'll sit down and we'll talk and see if we can get there. But unless I'm misreading this congregation, I think that most of us trust each other. And that is something that can take years to accomplish. It is something that did take years to accomplish. And I think it's valuable that we would be starting on day 1 with a history of trust and goodwill. We do not know what the future is going to look like, but I would wager that it will require us to work together, and I would bet that it will require us to give each other the benefit of the doubt. It will be powerful to begin with trust. Finally, though, and most importantly, I want to talk about curiosity and creativity. I began by talking about my own curiosity about what kind of church First Plymouth might be and what kind of church First Plymouth might become. And I have seen that same curiosity and that same creativity in so many of you. Really, I have seen it in every single one of you. I have seen all of you asking with passion and with resourcefulness and vision what the future might hold. We share that in common. We are all here today. We are all still here today despite everything, because we see something here that we will not let go of. And we feel something over the horizon that makes being here worthwhile. None of us knows what it will look like yet, because we will all of us discern it together, and we will journey there together. But we share on this day the sense, the intuition, the gut feeling, the faith that God is not finished with us yet, that our calling is not completed, that our distinctive voice is still needed, that we still have inclusion and welcome to offer, that we still have songs to sing together and community to build together and a church to be together. That is the spirit in which I would lead this congregation, should you decide to call me to that work. That is the spirit in which we would move forward together if that is what you decide. I'm grateful for all of you. I trust in the discernment of this body, and I await eagerly your vote. Thank you.
At this time, I would invite any questions for Eric before we sequester him away and get to the business of voting. Does anybody want to come up and ask any questions?
Eric, when I heard, and this is an aside, that you were going to consider this, it was like a big warm hug. I was so happy. My question is, you say part-time. I know you guys have talked about numbers of hours, so I just want a little more information on that. And, you know, whatever stage you're at. Thanks.
Thank you, Hope. Yes, this may also be a question that Rebecca would want to address. So I have a full-time job at the I Love School of Theology. It's not an undemanding job. However, I think one of the ways Rebecca has been describing it is there is sort of a coming together of circumstances that makes this possible in a way it wouldn't have been even a couple of years ago. One of those is, as she mentioned, the sabbatical that I'm on this year. So until about a year from now, I don't really have any responsibilities other than write a book, which I'm gonna do. But that at this point is it's not as hard as it sounds. The other variable there is that I received tenure about a year and a half ago, and that, for those who know academia, changes sort of the calculations of things. So it's a moment where I think I have both the time and the sort of energy to put into it on a part-time basis. I couldn't do it full-time, even by the policies of ILF, I couldn't do it full-time. I can do it part-time. In terms of, from the church's perspective, I think bivocational ministry is the direction that things are moving. It's rare, actually, these days that churches are able to afford a full-time minister. First Plymouth is probably one of the dwindling few that can do that, and I think it's good to get ahead of that trend a little bit and to reconfigure our imagination about what pastoral leadership looks like. On a sort of practical level, I think what it will probably look like for me is to be in the office 2 to 3 weekdays a week, and then, of course, pretty much all day Sunday is how it typically goes. And we are, I think the language we've used is this first year about 30 hours a week, and then following that about 20 hours a week or 25 perhaps. Ministry is always bigger than you think. It always takes more time than you think. It's worth noting, though, that the role I've had for the last dozen years or so has been 20 hours a week. So it's not a big shift in the number of hours. It's a shift for me in the kind of hours, the kind of attention that I would be spending here. I don't know if that addresses your question or if you have other things to add.
Yeah, and I would just add at this time, I know Eric mentioned, the thought is to bring on another minister to cover pastoral care, children, families, and youth. So we have already begun the work of trying to identify what that might look like and who that person might be.
It's a simple question. Maybe it's a loaded question. Are you sure?
Fair.
I'm pretty sure, John. No, here's the thing. I'm aware that this is not a leap we should take unless we're sure. And that goes for you too. So we've been in conversation for a little while, and that has been a process for me of becoming sure. And, you know, here I am, I'm ready.
I like it. Anybody else, or shall we send him away? All right, are you going with someone, or? I'll go to the office or something. Okay, sounds good, and I'll send somebody to come get you. Okay. All right. So at this time, I'm going to say church council moves that first, oops, gotta wait till he's. The church council moves that First Plymouth extend a call to Reverend Dr. Eric Smith to serve as our settled senior minister as of October 1st. I think at this time there could be discussion if anybody had something they want to say while Eric is not in the room.
I'm not sure of this, but is he still DOC? Do we have to go through an ordination?
So he's going through the process of, what is the word? Getting standing within the UCC. So that's a step that Eric hadn't taken up to this point, but will in order to fulfill the role of senior minister. I think it's a class and some paperwork, so working on that.
Just my personal opinion, but I think this is evidence of God.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, I think we can start the process of voting. So we have some volunteers to hand out some pens and some paper. I think you're writing yes or no on the paper, and then they'll collect them up and they'll be counted while we do our next portion. Maybe I'll give a few minutes for things to get passed around, and then I'll come back up and we can talk about the budget. Yeah, every member gets their own vote, but please do only if you're a member vote.
Congregation with kind of fresh eyes. Before you adjourn, can I say something to you today?
Hold on.
Because you're talking about little divisions and conflicts. And
I'm not sure if we can have non-members speak during the meeting, but I would invite you to tell me what you think.
okay, I get it. That's fine.
Also become a member. Okay, so while they count the votes, we'll talk budget if everyone can get settled back in. So you might notice that I am not, in fact, Carol Westfall. But I'm going to channel my best Carol. She gave me the script to her. What's that? You have the vote already? Okay. So we'll just a moment. Okay. So apparently they were very, very fast at counting the votes. So I come to bring you the news that Reverend Dr. Eric Smith was unanimously voted to be our next senior minister. Yep. Do you want me to hang her?
Thank you. There's a story I think about sometimes. It happened about 1,600 years ago. There was this professor, and he had gone off and sort of made a career for himself, and he had decided to move back home. So the story takes place after he's moved home, and on a Sunday morning, he goes to church, and he's standing there in church. In those days, they didn't have pews, they didn't have chairs, you had to stand. He's standing there in church listening to a sermon by the bishop, whose name was Valerius, and Valerius was commenting on how the congregation needed a priest. They needed a leader, and there was no one apparent to do it. And so he's standing there in the midst of this crowd of people, and as Valerius is giving his sermon, the crowd backs away from the professor until he's standing there by himself. And people begin to say his name, and then people begin to shout his name. And years later, when he was telling this story in a letter that he wrote to a friend, he said that at that moment he began to cry. And he said there were two reasons. You weren't supposed to cry in those days. He was a Stoic, and Stoics don't cry. But he began to cry. He said first because he was overwhelmed with the trust that people had placed in him, and he couldn't believe that they would acclaim him to that role. And the second reason he said that he was crying is because he realized he'd gotten himself into a predicament. The name that they were calling out that day was Augustine. We know him as Saint Augustine today. He turned out okay. It turned out fine. And this is the only time I think I'll ever compare myself to Saint Augustine, but I think I understand something about how he must have felt that day. I understand the immense honor of having been chosen for a role like this and the trust that you're putting in me, and I am humbled by that. And also, I know the feeling of finding oneself in a predicament and knowing that there's a lot of hard work ahead. But we're going to do the hard work together, and I am appreciative of all of you so very much, and I thank you for this day.
Well, it's a new day here at First Plymouth, so. Congratulations also to Jessa. So rewind, as I mentioned earlier, I'm not Carol Westfall. She unfortunately fell and hurt her arm and had to have surgery. Thought that she'd be able to Zoom in today, but I assured her she doesn't need to do that. So I'm gonna pretend I'm Carol Westfall. I'm reading her script, so it's gonna sound kind of funny because it's not from Rebecca, it's from Carol. And you got the slides, the breaks and everything? Okay. Well, folks, here I am again communicating with you at a congregational meeting remotely rather than in person. This time, however, I did not have sufficient notice to pre-record a video presentation. You may have heard that I tripped on an uneven sidewalk last week, breaking my elbow and requiring surgery for its repair. My mother always taught us that if something is worth doing, it's worth doing right. Although I'm certain she would not have included breaking your elbow at an advanced age in her list of something worth doing, I'm convinced that I would get full credit for doing it right. My tasks today are twofold. First, a brief recap of the 2024-2025 final operating budget results. And second, the presentation of the proposed final operating budget for the 2025-2026 fiscal year. A budget which has seen some substantial changes from the preliminary budget you adopted in June. The annual report you received a few weeks ago depicts the 2024-2025 fiscal year operating results in probably excruciating detail on pages 17 through 27. So I suggest that you keep it handy for future reference while I simply summarize the bottom line here today. For the 2024-2025 fiscal year, operating revenues came in at $30,398 over budget. That's a good thing. And operating expenses were $43,538 under budget. Also a good thing. As a result, we were able to get by with allocations from the First Plymouth Fund to balance the budget at the end of the year, which were $73,174 less than expected. The resulting bottom line is a nominal $764, which will be added to the operating reserve in fiscal 2025-2026. And that's all I plan to say initially about last year's results. So let's move on to the 2025-2026 proposed final budget. We took a very deep dive into church finances for this next fiscal year, as well as the details of the First Plymouth Fund at the June Congregational meeting. You may be relieved to hear that I do not plan to repeat that material. It's all in the June meeting book for your reading pleasure and for future reference. Today, my report will concentrate on the differences between the preliminary budget you approved at that June meeting and the proposed final budget being presented at this meeting. Here you see a summary of the proposed final budget compared to last year's actual results. We are forecasting about $68,000 less in operating revenues, offset by an increase of about $102,000 in allocations from the First Plymouth Fund. The resulting proposed final budget would be balanced at a level approximately $35,000 greater than the 2024-2025 final figures. On this slide, we start to look at the differences in the proposed final budget compared to the preliminary budget adopted in June. Based on final stewardship and end-of-year figures, current pledges are forecast to come in at nearly $64,000 less than anticipated in the preliminary budget. We do not expect any Learning Center income in the coming year, and the building rentals are expected to be up slightly over the June figure. The total operating revenue in this September look is forecasted at about $69,000 less than in June. Let's turn to the other component of total budgeted income, a category we refer to as additional revenue. This includes allocations from the First Plymouth Fund and end-of-year contributions from the First Plymouth Learning Center. We do not expect any income from the Learning Center in this fiscal year, so all of the additional revenue will come from the First Plymouth Fund. As a result of expected expense reductions between the June and September views, it looks like we will need to draw only about $4,300 more from the First Plymouth General Fund and the Turpin Education Fund in this proposed final budget. The general fund allocation percentage is 11% of the fund's balances over the last 12 quarters, and the Turpin Educational Fund allocation is 11.8%. The composite figure is 11.3%. Keep in mind, please, that the allocation from the Brand Facility Fund matches an expense line item in business administration, and therefore does not impact the budget bottom line. We show it here simply to give you a full picture of how we are using the First Plymouth Fund to support church operations. Turning to the expense section of the proposed final budget, here is where you will see the greatest changes from the June preliminary budget, resulting in more than $65,000 reduction. The changes are driven by a significant shift in our pastoral staffing structure. They assume that the Minister to Families and Children position will be left vacant after Alex leaves. The teaching minister position, which Eric has held for many years, in conjunction with youth pastoring duties, will be eliminated in October when Eric moves into the senior minister position, which is less than full-time. A pastoral care associate, like Eric and I talked about, will be hired in the community life department, who also will be called upon to assist with children, families, and youth. Other reductions were made in all departments, and you can see the resulting figures here. Now I'd like to take a moment for a quick look at the end-of-year balances on June 30 in the individual components of the First Plymouth Fund. The hot stock market has definitely been our friend, and although I must caution that we cannot count on its indefinite continuance, here is how that has helped us recently. From the First Plymouth General Fund, even though we withdrew $284,000 in fiscal year 2024-2025, the ending balance is down only about $25,000 year over year. We withdrew over $32,000 from the Turpin Education Fund, and its year-over-year ending balance is up more than $100,000. The Brand Facility Fund ending balance is over $52,000 higher, even though we used more than $45,000 of its funds in the past fiscal year. Once more, we cannot bank on this trend continuing infinitely, but it has certainly worked in our favor in recent months. And that is the proposed final budget for fiscal 2025-2026, balanced at revenues and expenditures of $1,178,044. Madam Moderator, I move the adoption of the proposed final budget for the fiscal year 2025-2026. Thank you, Carol. So she made the motion, and now we're open for discussion. And I'm going to do my best, but go easy on me.
Randy Nicholas. Rebecca, I noticed the Learning Center money was zeroed out. Is there something we should know about the source of that and why that happened between the last time we looked and now?
So a great source of information for that is the letter that Carol Westfall, as the current treasurer of the Learning Center Board, added in your annual meeting booklet. There were some significant losses due to several different variables. And I, along with council, I, as the interim director of the interim chair of the Learning Center Board, are working to see if we can remedy that problem. But right now, we're not planning on any income from down there.
Okay.
Really? Okay, I think we can move to voting then. So my language is, do you approve the 2025-2026 final budget as presented by First Plymouth's treasurer? So, so now we can vote by hand, right? It's a majority vote, right? Okay. If all those in favor? Okay. All those opposed? Abstentions? Okay, we have passed a final budget, so good job, guys. And with that, I will adjourn our meeting at 12:37 p.m. and invite Eric to come up and give us a benediction. Thank you guys for being here today.
This is more of a closing prayer than a benediction. I apologize. Let's pray. God, for 160 years, we have been a pilgrim people. For as long as there has been a city in this place, for as long as two have gathered in the name of love and God and justice, for as many years as we have found cause to join together in your work of community and service, we have been your church. For 160 years, we have greeted every new day with deep kindness and community and with curiosity and with faithfulness and energy. For 160 years, we have greeted every challenge with optimism and with common purpose and with hope. We come now to this new day. We come now to this new moment when we are called to renewal and we are called to new purpose and we are called to new expressions of a long-standing trust. The world is no less in need today of justice and of truth than it was in older days. The world is no less in need of a place where all are welcome and all can belong. The world needs peacemaking more than ever before. The world needs acceptance, and the world needs spirit, and the world needs love as it has always needed it, and as it has never needed it before. We have come here today, O God, discerning the shape of things to come, deciding how we will greet tomorrow. We do not know, we cannot know all that the future will bring. We do not know and we cannot know all that you are calling us to do and to be. We do know now and in this place that you are calling us onward. And to that call onward, we respond today, yes, we will go. Send us into tomorrow. Give us strength for that journey and give us joy for the road. For it is in your name we pray. Amen. Peace.